Canvassers of Utah County, November 19th, 2024, 2:02 p.m. The first agenda item is to approve the minutes from July 9th. Any questions there?
No, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, minutes are approved. Item 2, review the November 5th, 2024 general election summary report. Aaron, do you have any presentation or anything further other than a big smile? And everything just went wonderful, didn't it?
Just absolutely wonderful.
You gotta turn it on.
Is it on? Oh, it's on. It's got the green light. Okay. No, absolutely wonderful. We had a great time this last week. If you consider no sleep, great.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think this election went really well. There were some difficulties that were presented to us. There's a lot of stuff that hit the media that was a lot of half-truths. On election day, well, actually, kind of backing up a little bit, if you look at the statistics, we had a really good turnout at the election, at the polling locations, but we weren't the only county. There were a lot of counties that people turned out in person, and I think people had expressed their desire that some of them actually do want to come and vote in person. We had an 11% turnout at the polls. And in the primary, it was only 3.5%. And before that, it was less than 3. So we feel like I'd kind of been pushing for in-person voting, but I did not anticipate that great of a turnout. It was advertised in the media that we ran out of ballot paper. That wasn't actually true. We did have ballot stock, and we had ballots in stock. It was just 8.5 by 17 instead of 8.5 by 14. We took it to Alexander's printers, and they cut it down to size for us, and we had it to the voting locations within the hour. So Lieutenant Governor's office kind of got a little antsy and sent a plane to Arizona to pick up some more ballots, and we never saw those because we didn't need them. So we were prepared for that. We started to run out of ink toner of the magenta color in our printers. The Oki printers stopped manufacturing those printers, but Roseanne had the foresight to purchase a significant amount of extra toner, black, but not magenta. So we started running out, and we kind of tried to divvy it up. But we did end up running out of magenta toner in a couple places, and their printer stopped printing. But we printed what they call emergency ballots here, and we took them out to them. They require a little bit more processing, but no location ran out of ballots. We dealt with every issue that came up, and we handled it, I thought, spectacularly. And I want to commend my staff. My staff did a tremendous job. I cannot say more. They performed when they needed to, and I am very proud of my staff.
Very good.
So moving on to the, I've been processing the ballot so much, I really haven't had a good chance to actually look at the results as much. But I feel confident that the ballots that we received were compiled properly. We did have some issues in that with the emergency ballot. There was one polling location that did not check the voters in properly. One of them said they felt that because they didn't have to print a ballot, the last check-in process is to hit submit to print, and they neglected to hit that, so it did not send a print command, but it also didn't save the fact that they were checking in. We identified those. We talked with the Lieutenant Governor's office, and we talked with the County Attorney's office, and they determined that we would go ahead and count those ballots anyway, even though we can't physically associate them with a person. But they felt that they did check in. They just didn't check in quite completely. and it was just basically at one location. So there were 107 ballots that were not, or voters that were not checked in properly or completely, but working with the Lieutenant Governor's office and with our county attorney's office, they determined together with us that we would go ahead and count those ballots. So there is a discrepancy between the number of ballots processed and the number of ballots tallied. We also did
you
have
agree with that decision, Aaron?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we felt that it was corroborated that they did in fact, show up, they showed their ID, they actually signed the poll pad, but they didn't hit the submit because they felt it was going to send a print which wasn't going to print. So they felt that the ballot, giving them the ballot was good enough. Because there's a process before you sign where you have to hit agree, and then you sign, and then you submit. So they thought that was good enough on the poll pad. So those did not get processed properly. We also had an issue with provisionals, as did every county in Utah. The state allows for people to do same-day registration, and we had 11,309 people that showed up and without being fully registered and submitted these paper registrations to us for us to process over the next 2 weeks. And we worked tirelessly on getting those done. So we had help from Juab County after they finished theirs for 3 days. And we had the county clerk from Tooele also come for 2 days, which was a tremendous help for us to get those done. That's a process in talking with the other county clerks that we are going to petition the legislature to fix that system. Not that it's completely broken and that it's bad, but there needs to be some serious revisions as to how if we're going to continue to do provisional ballots, it's not going to be on paper. It was just very difficult. And in processing those ballots, those provisional ballots, we had anywhere from 8 to 15, 18 people working on those. And that wasn't their main things that they do. And so there were some mistakes on the provisional ballots. When you enter a provisional ballot, you have to know VISTA, which is the voter registration for the state. You have to know it pretty well, and there was some human error in processing those provisional ballots. We believe through discussions and looking at what happened, you actually enter in the provisional ballot. You validate them, you enter the provisional ballot, you save it, you have to go out to this other screen and you have to hit save again, and then you have to go back into it to give credit for that ballot for that person. And we found that some of the times with trying to do this quickly, that was not done, that last step again was not executed properly. And so some voters did not get credit for having voted, but their ballots still got counted. So in all, there was a total of 415 total, including the 107. And we believe that the large majority of that was in the provisional ballot process. And we had our staff move to doing provisionals, and we had a great response from our citizens and voters that came and helped us with the cures. So when people's signatures don't match what we have on file and on their ballot, we have to do what's known as curing their ballot. We have to send them an email, send them a letter, and some phone calls. And phone calls takes a tremendous amount of time. And you don't have to be certified on VISTA. You can just work off of a sheet. So we asked for volunteers, and we had a tremendous response. Our office upstairs was a lot of time just full of people making those phone calls for us. And I realized we really did this signature verification process and vote by mail really disenfranchises first-time voters. In looking at the signatures, we only have one signature for the first-time voters, and it's usually their 16-year-old when they get their driver's license. And that signature is changed in 3 to 5 years after they have that signature. And calling some kids, they just don't pick up the phone. They don't like talking to adults. They feel intimidated by the government calling them. And we had a hard time getting them to respond to those. And we didn't count a lot of them because we can't. By statute, their signature has to be significantly similar, and they aren't. And it needs to be advertised or the more education to the voters that if it's your first time, maybe you ought to go vote in person or come in and give us a good signature. We need to probably reach out to first-time voters with some affidavits saying, you're going to be eligible to vote. We need a good signature from you. So this was a really good learning experience. We had some good things that turned out from it, and we had some learning experiences. And had some late nights. So I was gonna say, I usually wear nicer clothes on Mondays, then I kind of wear jeans and a nice shirt on Tuesdays. But I didn't have to worry about that today because I've been here since 8:30 yesterday. So we did our very best, and I think we did a great job, and my staff did a tremendous job. So yeah, I guess you've got the summary and the canvas report. I think just highlighting a couple things. We did have an 83.8% turnout. That might be a little bit lower than some presidential turnouts here in Utah County, but I feel it was a very good turnout. And with that, I guess I'll just open it up to some questions, if you have any questions.
Looks like this just came over in our email about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, I'm
You
still
feel
looking
good about the canvassing of this, everything that you're, as our clerk?
Yeah, we did a lot of reconciling, and just this morning, it's interesting. There's three different systems we try to reconcile. We have to reconcile what's known as the Agilis system, which is the envelope sorter. So it kind of sends an envelope in different directions based upon what status that envelope has, whether it's a valid signature, whether they were called out of profile, if there's something wrong with the voter's registration status. So that kind of starts the whole process. And then it works through tabulation, which makes it into Vista. And then there's another system, which is the electionware, which we can't look at until the end of election night. And all three of those systems kind of have to line up. But once election day happened, we didn't really have too much time to really do reconciling to the electionware other than a top, high-level reconciliation. And this morning, we found out that there were some discrepancies as to our tallies to electionware. And so we spent a couple hours, and we did get that reconciliation down to 0. So we reconciled our tallies to electionware. So what's reported here is exact replication of the ballots that we processed. And if you look at the canvas report and the summary that you have, there is a 4-ballot discrepancy, and that is because after we finished everything this morning, my assistant elections director said, let's take one last look at everything. And we did find 4 more ballots, and so we went ahead and processed those ballots. So we do have to run this report one more time to include those 4 ballots, but we do have those 4 ballots on the canvas report.
Thank you.
Skylar, go first.
No questions for you?
No questions.
Looking at this, it is, I mean, I know you have an explanation, but it is highly concerning that we now have 2 elections in a row where you have counted more ballots than people who got credit for voting. I understand why, but this is what conspiracies are made of. It is hard for us to look at the public and say, have confidence in us when we say this is 2 elections in a row where we literally have counted more ballots than we can say voters had credit for voting. I understand there was an issue with emergency ballots. We did 85 emergency ballots in 2020. We didn't have any problem with the reconciliation. That's highly concerning for someone in the public that wanted to say, I can't trust our elections because you counted more ballots than you gave people credit for voting. And so luckily for us, we don't have any elections that are close enough that could have affected the outcome of the election. I know the staff worked incredibly hard. I know you guys worked incredibly hard. I know you've had very little sleep, but we literally need to praise the Lord that our margins were wide enough that we're not in court today, but we're here instead to canvass an election. There were a lot of issues along the way. Luckily, none of those issues would have affected the outcome of any election. And so we, as the Board of Canvassers, can certify these results with confidence, knowing that this wouldn't have affected the outcome of the election. But when we ask the, 368,000 active registered voters to trust us that we're counting their ballot, we should be able to show them that we counted their ballot. And there's over 400 people who voted who don't have confidence that their ballot was counted because they didn't get credit for voting. I think if roles were reversed, if I was sitting in your seat and you were sitting in my seat, the words you would have for me would not be as kind as, praise the Lord that our margins were wide. You would accuse me of fraud. You would accuse me of being dishonest. When I said, hey, trust me, we went through the process, we worked with the lawyers, you'd say, I don't want to trust you, I want transparency. I've been there, so I understand that you're working very hard, and I understand that things happen and you worked on those things. Some of these things were incredibly avoidable. Incredibly avoidable. This was not record turnout. You had a lower turnout than we had in 2020. Had you planned on 2020 turnout, a lot of your problems would have been solved. But we now have 2 elections in a row where you have counted more ballots than we can say people, and this has got to stop. We can't, our voters need to have confidence that when they cast a ballot, they're going to get credit for it in Vista. I would also say that it was the Lieutenant Governor's office who told you you could cut those 17-inch ballots down, and they helped you. They're the ones who got you the contact at Alexander Print. They're the ones who told you you could do it, and then you continue to throw them under the bus. They had their staff here. Their staff were working long hours. Their staff were working hard, and it's not appropriate for us as a county to have been underprepared to the point that we're asking other county clerks to come and process our ballots, and then you demean your peers in other counties when they went out of their way to help you. And we have a lieutenant governor and the lieutenant governor's office full of professional staff members who went out of their way to come and help us, and then we demean them. And that extra, those 17-inch ballots that you used are ones that I ordered as county clerk, and you continue to throw me under the bus. I think we just need to have gratitude that we have a team spirit and that we had county clerks who were willing to come and help us, that we had cities who sent their employees to come help us, that we have departments in our county that were willing to drop everything and come help us, and we had a lieutenant governor's office that was willing to come help us. And I think a little bit of humility and thankfulness would have gone a long way instead of shifting blame and pretending that you didn't know this would happen. You had lower turnout than we had in 2020. Had you prepared for the turnout of 2020, a lot of this could have been avoided. So I think being a little more gracious and thankful could have gone a long way. But we cannot have another election where you count more ballots than you give people credit for voting. That's just simply not acceptable.
Is that it?
Oh, there's more, but that was the nice part.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Because I'm going to have, like I said, I'm going to be gracious and thankful. I would like to thank the cities that sent their staff to come help us. I would like to thank the county clerks who sent them their staff or spent their weekends helping us. I would like to thank our staff for working through the weekend, for not going home, for working so hard. All of you were amazing. You guys worked so hard. A lot of that could have been avoided. But we cannot have another election where we count more votes than we give people credit for voting.
The difference is I'm willing to answer the question and be transparent about that.
I did
Many
too.
other times, no, you did not.
Name one question I didn't answer.
When are we going to have an audit? And you said, how do you do an audit? Tell me how to do an audit.
Right, I'll do the audit. Tell me what you want as an audit. If you give
would
me
not
the
a-
specifics
okay.
on what you wanted as an audit, I said I would do an audit. That means I didn't answer your question. I said,
Okay.
tell me what you want and I'll do it.
I could make this contentious, but I'm just going to let you say your piece. We did a tremendous job.
Yes, and you need to do better. You counted more ballots than you gave people credit for voting. That is the stuff conspiracies are made of. You have to
No.
do better.
Okay. And you need to do better also, Amelia. Trying to submit criminal charges against me for using a,
Or breaking the law.
no, I did not break any law. What law did I break?
When you sent our citizens' info to a foreign entity and gave their PII to a foreign entity? Because those are the only
Our-
criminal charges that I'm looking at. You literally took
Our
people's birth dates or their
county-
voter ID laws
our
or their
county-
addresses and sent them to
It
foreign
had nothing
entities.
to do with birthdays. You're crazy. Our county attorneys approved the system. I went through the legal process to start using the mass email system that I used because it was approved by the county attorney's office.
I didn't see the contract. Did we vote on a contract for that?
You haven't talked to your county attorneys.
Adam, did we vote on that contract?
It wasn't a contract. It's less than, it was $30 a month. You don't sign contracts. They approved the system.
Okay.
I sent it to them and they approved of it.
And how are you going to ensure that you don't
The
count
lieutenant
more?
governor's office knew I was using it. Our IT department knew they was using it. Now, this is turning into a
IT
little
did not
bitch
know.
match between you and I.
That's fine.
And this is not.
You need
This is not.
to fix your reconciliation problems. Period.
Okay, thank you, Amelia.
Can we make public comment before voting? Because last time I feel like we were tricked into you guys voting really quickly and then public comment, which I think is backwards.
We're not going to applaud. If you come up to the microphone and tell me so that the people viewing at home can hear your question, I guess her question is, can we move public comment? Do you guys have any problems with that?
No, I would prefer
I
that.
don't care.
That's fine.
Yeah. So before, let's see. We have your summary report. We don't need to make an action on item 2, but item 3, we will now open it for public comment. We'll have 2 minutes each. And please state your name, and we'll start with Mark Allen.
Thank you. Mark Allen, State and County Delegate. Feel like I'm at a bad family reunion. Skylar, good to see you up there, Commissioner. I would like to applaud Aaron Davidson's courage. I've sent you, all 3 commissioners, a suggestion that you look up 42 USC 1983, 1985, and 1986 federal violations before you become complicit in obstructing justice. Commissioner Gardner, I'm embarrassed that you represent Utah County. I think you ought to change places with Aaron Davidson if you can do a better job.
I did.
No, I would like you to change.
Reconciled all my votes.
I would like
I'm
him to be
engaged.
the commissioner and you to be the
I
clerk.
reconciled all my votes when I was the
So let's
clerk.
don't get picked at that. He is the only one that has stood up to the lieutenant governor violating grandma. That's a 1983 violation, federal, potential 290 years. I think you guys need to put the Constitution first, put personal grievances aside. The Constitution in this room has taken back seat for the last 10 years. It should be in the front seat. The state of Utah Constitution should be in the front seat, not personal grievances. Shame.
I
Well,
agree. I think we should.
Shameful.
follow
It's
the
not
law.
your time. Shameful. I suggest that we have some decorum, and let's don't turn this into a tit for tat. Your personal grievance against David Harrison,
Of personal privilege. If he wants to not turn this
it's
into
my
personal
time.
grievances, he cannot.
It's still my time. I'm speaking. I've got my 1 second left. I reclaim 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Thank you for your public service. Please put the Constitution forward. Please hold off on a vote until after the SCOTUS decision, December 12th. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
I will interrupt again if they attack me.
My name is Vince Newmeyer, and Aaron, I thank you. Aaron staff, thank you. You guys worked hard, and I appreciate that. And I'm embarrassed about the conduct in this room. I am. It's said a rising tide floats all boats. And so we would observe that in nature, but we have some problems with rising tides floating the boats here. In 2020, you may have reconciled the total number of voters, but the rising tide floated some boats better than others. What I mean by that is the protected votes, or the secret voters, as I like to call them, because they're not on the public record and they're not available for review, rose greater. There was 103% voter turnout in Utah County in 2020. A rising tide floats all boats. Now, there are still issues that we need to resolve. And part of the resolution of this is being able to analyze and look at the data rather than just rubber stamp it and pass it on. And that's what's happening all too often in this body. And part of what we see here is that now Aaron was working for transparency and accountability, and I appreciate that. And some of the things that Aaron tried to do in providing transparency, I found issues with, not in Aaron's work, but in the rising tide not floating all boats. And I'd love to tell you about it. I don't have time today, and you don't have time to listen without changing your schedule, because you ought to change your schedule, because we need to statistically analyze what Aaron has produced. It's not done, and it needs to be done. Thank you.
Vince?
Hello there. I'm Courtenay Ellison, and apologize for my voice in advance. I'm here to strongly encourage you to postpone certifying this election. In light of, I wasn't here in 2020, and I wasn't here when the COVID issue changed voting processes. The system that's in place right now is not secure. It is not the gold standard that many claim that it is. I don't know all the details about Lieutenant Governor's office helping us out, but the Lieutenant Governor's office shouldn't have been a party to doing any of this as they were in the election. The SCOTUS decision should most definitely be waited for. There are many shenanigans going on during this election. It should not be certified, at least until then, if not until all this analyses have been done. I don't know, again, I'm new, I came from Texas, but if, I don't know who was in charge of, whether it's commissioners or the elections office, that decided to let things happen in Davis County instead of our own county. That should not have happened. The process of mail-in ballots and all that garbage should not be happening. There's a lot of problems with the issues, but that aside, this election should not be certified at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sharon Anderson, and I live in Orem. And I'm trying to figure out how some of the comments stating we should be gracious and thankful turned out to not be gracious and not be thankful. I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned that I saw news articles saying that Aaron should recuse himself from his position because of bias. And I feel very strongly that those who were making such suggestions were demonstrating their own bias. And I want to thank you, Aaron, for all you've done and the hard work trying to make the elections the most accurate that they can be. And part of the problem is he's working with a broken system. When we have universal mail-in ballots, many voters are disenfranchised because their signature does not match what's on record. And we're told that mail-in ballot is inclusive, and yet this signature process and the verification, admittedly subjective. You know, we've heard people say it is subjective. You have professionals in FBI and other agencies that cannot certify or verify signatures. Why do we think somebody with a few minutes of, maybe even a couple of hours of online signature verification training should be able to do this? I urge you to postpone the conclusion of this election. We have too many things and too many problems, and so please consider not certifying at this time. Thank you.
My name's Jennifer, and I would like to also thank Aaron Davidson. I think he's courageous, he's forthright, and he's honest. We have very few government leaders at this time that are that have those values. And Amelia, I'm appalled at how you treat him. It's not right. You told him that he threw our lieutenant governor under the bus. You throw him under the bus over and over. You demean him. We have a large county. Utah County is a huge county, all these provisional ballots. I came and helped. There was so much to do. And he is doing his best, and he's honest. And he's just, and I also, you demean him and you threaten him, but I know that you're a board member of Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center, which many people in Utah, it's just, we have so many problems with our elections, and that's not what we need in Utah. And you're also an executive member for InnoGov, which helps develop voting systems for governments. So I think, he's not the one that should recuse himself. I believe it's you. And we cannot, this election cannot be certified. It's fraudulent ballots were sent out. There were people on the ballot that should not have been on that ballot. And so I'm asking you to not certify the elections.
Okay, my name is Natalie Clausen. I was a candidate on the ballot and have personal experience about some of these things. I do want to thank the clerks and the other people who have been involved. We have problems with our elections in Utah, and a lot of that is because of process and not because of the clerks. We have provisional ballots, which puts an undue burden on the clerks. We have cure ballots that we wouldn't have to have if people could vote in person, which there's a lot of interest in doing so. And so we want to thank the clerks for doing their job. There's a lot of concerns about certifying the election today. And one of that is because of the denial of basic information you don't have access to, and we as a public don't have access to. We don't have access to the CVRs, like the cast vote records that are available in other states. They're not available to the public. They're not available to candidates. They're not available to you as county commissioners and as board of canvassers. That has been a problem for a long time, and we would like you to step up and to push back against our lieutenant governor and say that we demand to have this information so that we can accurately certify an election. There were severe anomalies in the primary election that should be looked at closer, and this information should be available. There's also concerns with this race. As many of you know, we have a case in front of the SCOTUS that should be heard and decided by December 12th. There's a lot of concerns that the ballot was printed improperly, that Spencer Cox never qualified for the ballot. This audit that recently came out showed that he did not have the signatures to even be put on the ballot. So we have concerns over that, and that those need to be looked at closely. There was a lot of, so many concerns with this election where we had sight holes right over where our names were printed so people could see from the outside of an envelope who was voted for on the ballots. That's a problem. We had the commissioner here who made a story up about a deep fake that I was involved in the gubernatorial race, which did not exist, but which aired the day before the election. There are a lot of problems with it, and we hope that we want you to ask for more information before you certify. Thank you.
Afternoon, my name's Thomas Cook. Skylar, I thank God that you're on the commission. I also thank Mr. Davidson and your entire staff. I heard this young lady say she's been here for 32 hours nonstop. So thank you for your efforts and your hard work. The last thing that I want to address is Amanda's statement about the lack of citizens being able to have full faith and confidence in the election system. If you truly believe that there's this concern, then you will not certify these elections. And everything that has been highlighted here as grave concerns for us as citizens, you'll address by not certifying the elections. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we will now go to item 3. Oh, yes, please come up.
I agree with the speaker of a few moments ago who spoke.
Sorry, tell us your name.
My name is Susan Linford.
Okay.
The speaker who spoke a moment ago regarding the problem that Spencer Cox was not eligible to run as governor in the state of Utah because he did not get the necessary votes. I strongly agree with that. It is a problem. It is valid. I urge you to please consider that before you certify this election because it was unfair and unfounded. Spencer Cox never should have been on that ballot. And that's the end of my comment.
Thanks, Susan. Okay. Now anyone else? Come on up.
Todd Johnson, Orem. I'd like to say I agree with those who would like to delay this until after the December 12th decisions have been announced. Phil Lyman and Natalie Clausen met the requirements to be on the ballot in a very transparent process during the convention, caucus convention. The Spencer Cox campaign has yet to provide evidence that he met the requirements to be on the ballot, let alone be on the primary. And also the process here, when you dump 11,000 ballots on a small office and on election day, it seems like it's not reasonable to expect them to be able to process that in one day. I think they've done a great job dealing with the challenges, and I want to thank the staff, thank Aaron Davidson, and thank his staff and the volunteers who helped step up to the plate when that was dumped on them. And I'm done here now. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Sherry Peterson. I would just like to state that I've been very involved in this election, watching things firsthand, and I've seen a lot of corruption involved in it, and I've been really pretty surprised about that. So like we talked about, It's a fraudulent ballot. How can we certify a fraudulent ballot? And I just want to bring to your attention that Utah is going to be looked at on a national scale. And we need some heroes that are going to stand up and say, this isn't right. And we want to make sure that this is right before we certify any election. And that we have people that are going to stop and just say, we had fraudulent ballot. We had other problems that happened. We've got to look into this. We've got to look into the primary. Why can't we look into that primary election and be seeing any of the results that need to be shown? And I mean, why is it hidden? If you have nothing to hide, why do you hide it? Why do we hide the petition signatures? Why are we hiding the results of the election? I know that you have a heavy responsibility here, but I'm looking for heroes on this. So thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. We will officially close the public comment, and move to item 3. Approve and authorize the commission chair to sign the November 5th, 2024 general election certified report. Obviously,
Question for Aaron. You heard public comment.
that's what I was just about to ask.
Sorry.
Please take it away.
Sorry, Chair.
No, you're great.
Commissioner Gordon had asked you prior, did you have any issues with certifying this? Now that you've heard public comment, is there any identified issues that we have jurisdiction over or issues that you feel now that you've heard public comment?
That's a tough question.
It is. You and I know what we have what we have jurisdiction over and what we don't. And so that's why I tailor it to that question.
Right. So to code, I followed code. My personal beliefs are not entered into this. I saw a lot of, I wouldn't want to say fraud, but I saw incompetence on a lot of other parties involved in the election process. My main complaint is with the U.S. Postal Service. I don't have full confidence in the U.S. Postal Service. I advocated to use drop boxes and to vote in person. I joined 18 other counties by not paying return postage in January, and I was criticized by Amelia Powers Gardner on that issue, whereas I was just joining the majority, and one of it was to save cost. This election, based upon what I was able to move, the use of drop boxes increased from 60 to about 76% in this election. It was 78% in the last election. And if you calculate that out, that was the savings of about $44,000 to the county by having it increase the use of drop box over U.S. mail. And also of the people that did return it through the Postal Service, 79% of them did put a postage stamp on it, saving the county another $30,000. So in total, I saved the county about $73,000 by moving to not paying for postage, joining the majority of the counties not paying for postage. And with Amelia out there saying, use the mail. You don't have to put a stamp on it. As well as Michael McKell and the Lieutenant Governors both criticized me for that move. We could have saved another $6,600 if everybody had put a stamp on it. So I put the blame of that on them. I have a picture of a ballot that was returned to the voter. It has a postmark of November 4th on it, and the Postal Service delivered it back to the voter. There's issues with the U.S. Postal Service. I have from Springville. I had several ballots that were actually postmarked on the 5th, so it was too late. And they had it stamped at Springville, but it was not postmarked in Salt Lake until 3 days later. Okay, so if someone's turning in their ballot the day before election, and even if they don't get it counterstamped and just let it go through the normal system, it's not going to get here on time. And we did not count over 500 ballots this election and they were postmarked on the 5th, But the voters don't know the difference. And a lot of the election officials just say, well, it's on the voter. No, it's on us to tell them the difference between voting in person, voting in by drop box, and voting by mail, and know the pluses and minuses of each of those different steps. And a lot of election officials just say, they're all the same. They're not the same. So there are issues in that aspect that I have tried to influence the use of drop box over voting, or voting in person over the use of the U.S. Postal Service. Now about the issue with the fraudulent ballot, again, that's not my position to call that. That is through the courts, and to certify it, that's yours is a legislative position to make that determination. My determination was to process the ballots as efficiently as I possibly could. And it gives you great cause to contemplate whether you want to wait a day or two or think about it. That's your prerogative. But I think that there were some serious issues. I don't think Davis County should have been the only county looking at those ballots or the signature packets. They said they had a contract, and they did not have a contract in place. That contract was not placed until after the signature verification process had already occurred for the Cox packets, and it did not get signed by the attorneys for the state as required by the contract. There are statements that the contract really wasn't necessary. If it weren't necessary, they kept justifying the process by the contract, and then when they found out the contract wasn't there, then they said, oh, it wasn't necessary. So there are some issues with the contract. If Davis County, or if they had allowed the different counties to verify the signatures, I probably would have had to hire some extra staff, and they would have been trained, and we could have used them in the provisional process. There are a lot of people that take advantage of the provisional process and wait till the last day. Some people, we send them 2 ballots, and they still vote provisionally, costing us time and expense. And they take advantage. If you allow people to procrastinate, they will procrastinate, and they'll make use of it. And it costs us a lot of time. So everybody that voted provisionally should take great cause and consideration for the process that has to happen after they turn that provisional ballot in. It's not an easy process. It's not something you can just do in a second. Each one takes anywhere from 3, sometimes up to 10 minutes, depending on how complex and the information that the voter gives us. So to answer your question, I did my part, and I am very proud of my staff. And so the criticisms that are thrown at me, I view them as criticisms of my staff, and are completely undue criticisms. We're learning, and we have some great experience. Roseanne, when she left, she took a lot of experience with her, and she really ran the election in the previous for the previous clerks. That's who ran the show then. But I'm down there every day. I'm with my crew, and I am very proud of them, and it hurts me more for them when I get criticisms thrown at me, because I know that they're doing their very best. So I'm going to defer that decision to you, but I would take it under great advisement of the different sides of the arguments of whether to certify or not.
Any questions from you, Commissioner Gart?
So I think the language of it, Adam, can you help me with this? The language is basically what we vote on is to accept this report from the clerk. Right?
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner.
Okay, so the vote is us accepting what Aaron certified to us as accurate.
Correct.
So if there was a certification today and then in December, a judge were to overturn something, it would overturn today's, Mr. Attorney?
That's a good question. I mean, there's not a lot of precedent for something like that, but yeah, if there is a Supreme Court ruling that could potentially interfere with this, then we'd have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to best do that. But as far as what options you have today, there's not a lot of options that you have. As the Board of Canvassers, you canvass.
And what we're canvassing is Aaron's report.
Correct.
Any questions there?
No, I understood that.
Okay.
But I guess I'll have my piece before my vote.
Sure.
Yeah, elections are controversial, and I'm not a fan of the fight each other pettiness that we sometimes fall under. Aaron and his team, thank you for all your work. It was rough. Caroline and I was on the ballot, so I wish I could have helped a lot more than I was able to. But being on the ballot limited my opportunities to assist. But hopefully, Aaron and his team felt that I was willing to help. I would check in with Aaron and Brian, and like I said, it was rough, and I'm fully committed in improving it. Aaron knows that. Brian knows that. His team should know that. I've taken the clerk portfolio in the last 2 weeks, and not much to do in the middle of an election, but I can promise you that Aaron and I will work very hard to improve the next one, and I'm sure he's committed to that as well. We have very limited scope in this. A lot of the issues brought up in public comment, which I'm glad the chair allowed before canvassing, are not within our jurisdiction, and sometimes that's frustrating. As a member of the public, I've sat there just 2 months ago, and you feel unheard, but I don't want you to leave feeling unheard. We need to channel energy. Aaron has great ideas. This room has great ideas. We need to channel our energy into areas where we can influence, and that's the legislature. So I know there's a lot of concerns with this. I have a lot of concerns. The legislature is where this energy needs to be focused, and we need to hold our legislators accountable. If they are not listening to you and your concerns, replace them. That's where we need to focus energy on this. And I know it's frustrating, and I feel a lot of the concerns. I love the drop box, as Aaron has emphasized. Let's not use the mail. Let's use the drop box. There is a couple people who need the mail, and it's there for them. The drop box saved us, quoted 73,000. That's great. It's the best way that we have now. We don't get this. The three of us don't get to pick mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots is given to us, and we will do what the state law tells us to do, and that's administer the election that way. So my parting word is be constructive in your criticism and channel it where it's beneficial, and that's the legislature, and we hear you. So I know many people will be upset or feel not heard. I hope that you don't feel that way. And myself, I'm very committed to supporting the clerk's office and all of their efforts moving forward, and I promise the public it will be better next time.
When I would echo on the transparency, even when I was the clerk, I argued with the legislature saying we should make more of these things transparent. I agree with you. We should have access to these petitions. I agree that the law doesn't make sense. We should have, if your signature is shown for a referendum, why isn't it shown for a signature petition? I would like there to be more transparency. We're bound to follow the law. I agree wholeheartedly with Skylar. I thought the law should have been changed years ago. Now we have an example as to why. I agree. That law needs to be changed. That law needs to be updated. I would have no problem telling every one of the legislators in Utah County that we support that law being changed. And so we need we need the legislature to address many of those issues. So I totally agree with that. And we do have to do the best we can within the bounds of the law.
More time would allow for more transparency.
For the canvas, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, and the law gives us 14 days. That's today. The law gives us 14 days. So I agree. But we're bound within those. I don't disagree. Yeah. So I would love for us to work together on those solutions. Absolutely, there's a lot of things that can be done, that can move forward, that can make this process better. There are a lot of things, hoops that you have to jump through that are frustrating. Agreed.
I would echo the thanks, really. It was heartwarming to get text messages from friends in Spanish Fork that were there on Saturday and helping count and things like that. So people step up when,
They were
like
great.
you mentioned, the volunteers. That makes me really happy, and your staff, we can't say enough good about all that they've done. It's been a marathon. So well done. Anything else?
No.
I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve and authorize the commission chair to sign the November 5th, 2024 general election certified report.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that passes. Okay, one final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you, everyone.